Imagine one night you go to sleep and when you wake up, everyone is suddenly driving on the opposite side of the road. That's what happened in Sweden at 5 a.m. on September 3rd, 1967. In a span of 10 minutes, all of Sweden flipped everything on its head and started driving on the right side of the road. You would imagine that there was absolute chaos, but somehow Sweden made it work, following years of planning, military assistance, and $308 million spent. It was so life-altering that it got its very own unpronounceable day. Höga trafikomläggningen.
But why swap from the left side of the road to the right? After all, England and its former colonies, such as Australia, New Zealand, and India, all drive on the left side of the road and have no intentions of swapping sides anytime soon. So why did Sweden swap over despite public protests? Why was this whole move a mistake? And why are Swedish fish not actually Swedish? Today, I'm going to answer 2/3 of those questions. Hello people of the internet, I'm Nico, a Swedish fish connoisseur and a guy who wants to drive a right-hand drive car simply so I can go backwards through a drive-thru. Let's explore why driving on the left side of the road is arguably the right side of the road. That's a knee slapper.
First, let's look at how we even got here. Currently, 35% of the world still drives on the left side of the road. Most of these are former English colonies like India, Australia, and New Zealand, but there are some outliers like many South African countries and of course Japan. So while it's easy to understand why some former colonies drive on the left side, the origins of older countries like Japan and England driving on the left are rather unexpected. It all dates back to Roman times and charioteers. The common theory is that because most people, like today, were right-hand dominant, charioteers would stand on the right side of the chariot to keep their right hand free to pull their sword should the situation require it. And so, to maintain a clear view of the road ahead and the space between them and oncoming charioteers, everyone would ride on the left side of the road. Most of the world, including countries that now drive on the right side, adopted this practice, but it all changed with the advent of freight wagons. Like with charioteers, the change was because of most people being right-handed, the difference being the priority task. With freight wagons, controlling the horses was more important than self-defense, and that control was maintained through the use of a whip. To effectively maintain control without crossing the arms over, the driver would then have to sit on the back left horse, and as a result, the custom swapped to driving on the right side of the road. As for why countries like Japan and England did not swap over, it's kind of hard to find sources on this, but my theory is that it has to do with the geography. Because Japan, England, and most of its former colonies, we'll ignore India for now, are islands, there was no peer pressure, if you want to call it that, in the form of roads from countries where people ride on the right side. And if you then consider that both countries are in many ways very traditional, it starts to make sense why these countries never swapped over. That doesn't really apply to Sweden though. Sweden is certainly not an island, and in fact Sweden didn't swap over until the late 1960s, decades after most of Europe had already started driving on the right side of the road. So why go through all of the trouble of changing out the traffic signs and the traffic lights and all of the road infrastructure? Because in Sweden's case, it was only a matter of time. Sweden is known for snow and PewDiePie, not for its automotive industry. Out of the two notable Swedish car companies, Saab and Volvo, only the latter still makes cars. As a result, most Swedish residents were buying foreign-made cars, most of which were left-hand drive. Couple that with the fact that even Volvo was making left-hand drive cars, and suddenly the vast majority of all vehicles on Swedish roads were left-hand drive, but driving on the left side of the road. This unfortunately had a negative effect on road safety, hence why Sweden was looking to change all of their infrastructure to suit the cars on the road. Interestingly, the people of Sweden actually objected to this change. In fact, a whole 83% of voters voted against it. But because of the fear that the increased number of crashes and fatal crashes was due to the increasing number of left-hand drive cars driving on the left side of the road, the Swedish government pressed on in the face of opposition. And in the early hours of September 3rd, 1967, Sweden swapped all of the cars over to the correct side of the road. That day, there were no fatal accidents on Swedish roads, and that year saw an 18% decrease in fatal accidents. So, job well done. Not so fast. If you take a look at this graph, this dip down looks very good. But if we zoom out, the next 3 years show an increase in fatal accidents that almost reaches the same level as before Sweden swapped sides. So it seems that driving on the left side of the road in left-hand drive cars is only slightly more dangerous than driving on the correct side of the road. So, can an argument be made that the rest of the world that still drives on the right side of the road should actually swap back to the left side? Yes, actually. If you look at the crash statistics of developed left-driving countries versus developed right-driving countries, countries like Japan and England are noticeably lower than Germany or France and substantially lower than the United States. Now, there are other, likely more influential factors that play into this, like the quality and design of roads and driver education, but there is a lesser-known reason to help explain this difference. As I've stated before, most people are right-hand dominant, but with that, most people are also right-eye dominant. This means that in countries where you drive on the right side of the road, the dominant eye is predominantly looking at things next to the road: pedestrians, parked cars, cyclists, and what have you. But if you were to swap it around to driving on the left side of the road, suddenly the dominant eye for most people is focused on oncoming traffic and the cars ahead, rather than possible distractions on the side of the road. Now, there are counter-arguments that having the dominant eye viewing the side of the road is actually more beneficial, but the case still stands that driving on the left side of the road in a right-hand drive car does have some safety benefits. Now, if you live in a country that does not drive on the left side of the road, do not expect that to change anytime soon, even if there are a lot of people showing public support, because that kind of a change requires funds that no country is willing to cough up. And likewise, don't expect a country that drives on the left side of the road to swap over for similar reasons. The truth is, there are far better ways of improving road safety, like for instance designing roads to be safe, which is something that is not currently happening in a lot of places. I'll talk about that more in a future video if you're interested. Also, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos where I explain how the automotive industry affects our lives, then consider subscribing. It's free and it actually helps me out more than you might think. Until next time, people of the internet, peace out.